Alright guys, before we start with our database migrations, we're going to have to set up our database and .env files, which we'll start with our .env file right here. Down here in the database section, I'm going to name the database vote app. My WAMP database right now, this login is just root, and the password is left blank. I'll save that, and I'll come down to the terminal and I'll do PHP artisan migrate. Alright, we see we're getting this PDO exception, could not find driver. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out which pnp.ini WAMP is currently using. To do that, we just type php -ini. You see it's currently using one located in C, PHP, and php.ini. So we'll open that up. We're in C drive, php, php.ini. I'm just going to drag that up here. And I'm going to do a search, Control F, to extension equals PDO MySQL. That should have actually had an underscore on it, but I see it found it right there. What we're going to do is we're going to remove these. Then we're going to go File, Save, and we're going to go ahead and reload WAMP. Alright, let's go back and do the PHP artisan migrate. Alright, now we're getting a different error. Table schema error. We'll go into App, Providers, App Service Provider, and down here in the boot section, we're going to use schema default string length 191. And up here, I'm going to use, we'll just copy and paste that one. Except it needs to be the facades folder and then schema. Alright. Now the reason it's doing this is because in the database migration, we're currently using a string, and for some reason it's thrown that error for several versions of Laravel. I don't know why they haven't fixed it yet. Let's go ahead and try now. Because it's got the error, it partially created the table. So we're going to go back and reload this. Alright, vote app, users, we're going to drop that one. Alright, let's try again. Alright, now it successfully created the tables we needed. Now that we got our database set up and we know everything's working correctly, we're going to go ahead and move on to setting up our controllers and migrations for our vote platform. Let's start with PHP artisan make migration. Oh, my bad, it's make controller votes controller, and then we're going to use the resource. Alright, now we're going to do PHP artisan make model. We'll call it vote, and then we're going to use the -m to set up a migration as well. Alright. Alright, you can see it created a model in app vote, and it also created a migration for the database down here. We'll do the same thing, except we'll make another one for vote candidates, also with the M to make a migration for that. You see it made the vote candidates model right there, and it made a migration right there. Now we'll go into the votes table. We're going to go into the schema create section. This is what it will write to the database. We're going to use table. We're going to call it a string. User ID. This will be the ID that the auth login passes to the vote database to connect a vote to an actual user. So we're going to go table integer I'm going to call this one vote. That's going to be which candidate the user votes for, which is going to be done through an ID like 1 or 2 or 3. And then we're going to track the user's IP address so that we can make sure there's not any vote manipulation. To that, we're going to create another string. We're just going to simply call it IP. But just in case it can't be passed by the database, we're going to make it nullable. Nullable. Alright. And we're going to go ahead and save that. Now we can go ahead and pass it to the database. PHP artisan migrate. See it right here. User ID, vote, and IP. By the way, we don't need to do anything down here because we're doing entire migration, not just adding a few fields to the table. Now let's actually go into the vote model, and then we'll give it permission to use those fields we just put in there. So we'll do protected, fillable, and then we'll do user underscore ID. That would need to be quotes. The other one was vote. And the last one we need to pass in is IP. Save that. Let's also connect it to the user database so that it can connect every vote to a user. We'll do public function user return this belongs to app user, which is going to connect it to this model right here. Save. We'll also go into that app user and let's actually go back and copy this. Instead, we're going to do votes instead of, oh, I see, I wrote that wrong. Belongs to. Here, it's going to be has many. This will allow the framework to recognize that each vote belongs to a specific user. Also, when we first started, we created the votes controller, which is here. You see, since we added the resource field, it has created all of these for us. You have index and create, which index would be where it displays the main page. Create is where the form is to pass to the database. Store will allow you to pass the values into the database. And then show and edit will allow you to select one with a specific ID to either show it to a user or edit that one specifically. You also have update, which will allow you to both view and edit, and destroy, which is to delete a field from the database. But what we'll need to do so we can actually access any of this on the front end is go down to routes, web.php. Instead of writing each of those out individually, we would do route resource vote votes controller, and this will pull everything from each of the resource functions inside inside the controller. Each of these, it recognizes each of those and pull from each of them. Oh, I see what I did. Alright, there we go. Alright. You can view all the routes that it created by going back to the terminal and we'll go clear. To see all the routes, you can type php artisan route list, and you can see all of the routes created through that resource. You've got the main page, which would be vote. You also have vote create, which would be the page that the form would be on, and then you have the put and post functions to pass it to the database. Alright, we'll go over to the browser. We'll go back to our local site where it's running, and it would be vote would be the index, and then vote create would be the form. Vote create. But we'll need to create a blade view file to display them in. For that, we'll go into resources, views. I'm gonna go create a new folder, call it pages. Go in there, create another folder, call it vote, and then we'll create a new file and we'll call it index.blade.php, the one that will display the votes. We'll add another one. We'll call it cast.blade.php, and that is where we will cast our vote and pass the value to the database. Let's go back into our migrations. Let's set up our candidates migration before I forget. For this, we're actually going to put quite a few values in here. We'll do table string. We'll name it candidates. Candidate name. We'll copy and paste this to make this easier. I'll make another field called candidate icon. We'll do candidate image, candidate website, candidate description, and we'll also do a start date and an end date. The start and end date will allow us to set when users can begin voting and when voting ends. Now we'll do PHP artisan migrate to pass it to the database. Nothing to migrate. Oh, I see. Accidentally already sent it. Let's actually drop the vote candidates field. Alright, let's do it again. Alright, actually we need to remove the migration from it. Go here. Delete that so it doesn't know it's in a migration before. Alright, now it passed it in. Passed all the fields we wrote into there. On my project, I will not be creating an admin dashboard to input all of the candidates into the database, simply because I plan to only add candidates once every couple of months. So for me, it is fairly easy to just manually input them all into the database. However, if on your project you would like to create a front-end dashboard or a form to pass the candidate values to the database, you would do it exactly the same way as we'll be doing for the votes controller and the create view. If you like this video and you find it useful, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or issues, please post them below.